What features are required?
Some game server hosting solutions include features that others do not. The availability of these features could influence your choice of game server hosting solution. What features do you expect the game server hosting solution to provide, and what features do you plan to provide separately? A lot depends on your game design and whether you consider the feature to be integral to game hosting or not.
One example is matchmaking. Matchmaking is a common feature of most multiplayer games. Some people consider matchmaking to be strongly connected to game server hosting, while some consider it to be entirely independent of game server hosting. How do you expect matchmaking to work? If you consider that matchmaking needs to find a game session in a location that has similar latency for all players in the match, and that matchmaking requests drive game session scaling, tight integration between matchmaking and game server hosting makes sense. If you only expect matchmaking to group players of similar skill and the group can be placed in with any game session, matchmaking is loosely coupled with game server hosting. In that design, matchmaking can be treated as a separate activity. Some game server hosting solutions include matchmaking as an optional feature, others do not. There are several other features you should consider that will help differentiate game server hosting solutions. If a game was developed and hosted on premises, scaling of infrastructure might be something that's part of the business process and is revisited quarterly. One benefit of hosting games in the cloud is dynamic scaling infrastructure to meet demand. Scaling the number of game servers depends on scaling the number and type of EC2 instances provisioned. Is automatic scaling part of your game design? Would you like the scaling to be provided by the game server hosting solution? How do you know when a game session is ready to receive players, and how do you respond to game session state changes, like whether the session is ending or a player has dropped out? Is session management part of your hosting solution or something you plan to code? When a player or a group of players requests a game, how do you select a region, fleet, and instance with an available game session? How do you get credentials and an IP address back to the players so that they can connect directly to the game server? Is average player latency to the region a consideration for fair gameplay? Is player placement in a game session a feature you expect from the game hosting solution or something you plan to implement separately? What kind of information does your game design need about instances? Did you plan on gathering metrics from the instances? Would you like that to be integrated into the game server hosting solution, or were you thinking of monitoring as a separate activity? The price of EC2 instances can change with availability and may be different from one region to another. This is especially true of spot instances that are purchased at market rates. Service prices are available through an API on AWS. Were you thinking about price shopping for instances? Would you like games to be placed on lowest cost game sessions first? What's your plan for publishing patches and updates to your game? Do you want the ability to allow existing game sessions to play out and new game sessions to be started from a newer version of the game server software? Or had you planned to shut down the entire game service for maintenance when patches or updates are needed? Do you require sophistication in deployment of new game versions? For example, do you want to be able to host multiple game server versions at the same time, compare them, and determine whether to switch from the existing game server to the new game server as confidence grows? Or have you planned to cut over to the new version all at one time? It's a good practice in game development to focus your efforts on the features that make a difference to your customers. If your players care about a feature, maybe you want more control over it and more ability to customize it. If a feature is common across games and players only care that it works, maybe you want more automation and less customization. Prioritize your resources where they'll make the most difference to your players. This is one key to choosing a game server hosting solution that's right for your game.